Hi, everybody. Welcome to Phil and Dave's Excellent Adventures. Just Dave here. Today I'm talking about the movie Fool's Paradise. This is going to be a spoiler review, so if you have not seen the movie yet and you are concerned about spoilers, I would suggest you go and watch the movie first before you watch this review. So, Fool's Paradise is Charlie Day's directorial debut, I believe, and it's about a man who is released from some sort of assisted living facility, mental health place, who looks like a famous actor. When that famous actor dies, then this man who is voluntarily mute replaces him. So yeah, it's kind of like a Hollywood farce, kind of satire kind of movie. As far as what I liked about the movie, overall, I thought the cast was great. I really like Charlie Day as Liotta Pronto, who doesn't really speak at all until the very end of the movie. I like Ray Liotta in here. It's great to see him in something else. Adrien Brody's always good. Kate Beckinsale was great. I liked Edie Falco in this a lot. Jason Sudeikis I thought was really funny. I liked Common, Jillian Bell. Overall, I thought most of the performances were really great. I think that's everyone on the poster, right? Just about, yeah. Malkovich, always good. So yeah, I liked that. I liked the music throughout. The music was done by a guy named John Bryan. He does a lot of Paul Thomas Anderson stuff like Boogie Nights. He also did Step Brothers, Paranorman. He's worked with a bunch of bands. I think he played guitar on One Headlight. He was a session musician for a while. He's produced a bunch of bands. So yeah, cool. I like the music a lot in this. I thought the cinematography and the overall look of it looked pretty good. Especially for a first-time director, like it looked like a movie. And I could see what was going on. The shots were nice and clean. It wasn't too close. Overall, I thought the movie looked good, and I like the overall kind of look of the actual like film sets and the way everything looked. It did evoke kind of an old-time Hollywood kind of vibe, and I appreciated that. I like the premise. I thought it was an interesting enough sort of idea. It's almost like a Mark Twain Prince and the Pauper kind of story, and I'm sure there's other examples of similar things. But kind of a goofy idea, but kind of an interesting idea actually. So depending on how it's executed, so I liked that. I liked a lot of the jokes about diet. Like there's a part where Ken Jeong is talking about how he wants to get a salad but with no dressing and like nothing else and all this kind of stuff. These are specific dietary restrictions, which of course, I understand people in California, especially, but all over are health conscious, and that joke resonated with me. There's also one where there's a guy doing like cocaine, a big massive pile of it, and then he's talking about diet and like eating healthy and stuff. And I've seen similar things, not that exact thing, but I have seen like guys smoking cigarettes and drinking beer and talking about how whatever they don't want something to hurt them. I'm like, you're smoking cigarettes and drinking beer, what are you even talking about right now? So that resonated with me. I thought it was funny. I laughed out loud a couple times in this movie. I think about 3 times or so I laughed out loud. One was early on when there's a car that hits a fire hydrant. I think random violence is funny, so that got me to laugh. Somebody at one point throws a drink at Latte's head. Again, got to laugh at me just because I think it's the shock thing when I see something. I don't know. I'm just a dumb guy. I think when I see violence, I'm like, oh, that's funny. I'm like a child. And also when that same scene I was talking about where the guy's got the pile of cocaine, he's talking about his diet, Latte knocks over the table. And I think it was just funny to me because the guy's reaction wasn't even like really angry. It was just like, oh, come on, man. Like that was funny. He knocks over like 3 tables throughout this. That was the only one that I thought was really funny, but it was a recurring gag, I guess. I don't know. I did appreciate the movie wasn't too mean-spirited. I feel like a lot of modern comedies especially seem to just have a very kind of mean way about them that I don't really appreciate. And there was some meanness in this movie. It wasn't completely, like a kid's movie, but I appreciated that overall the movie seemed to have sort of a positive message, and it ends with like, kind of friendship and stuff like that. So yeah, and I like that Latte was mostly a nice character. He didn't really have a lot of ill will or ill intent toward anyone. He kind of just walks around and things just happen to him. I did like there's a part where he does some dancing in this. That was pretty good. I liked his dancing. I thought that was pretty funny. And overall, I think the direction was good, especially for a first-time director. I think it looked great and a hell of a lot better than I can do. I'd say that much for sure. As far as what I disliked about the movie, I like Charlie Day as Latte Pronto. He doesn't really speak at all, but I think he kind of pulled it off. And it was interesting to see him playing a different character than just Charlie from Always Sunny, who I feel like he was in Pacific Rim, and when he shows up, I'm just like, he just seemed like Charlie to me. I'm just like, that's Charlie Kelly. Like, you should be working the bar right now, taking care of a rat problem. And in this, I would say, even though he's a somewhat similar character, kind of like a lovable doofus kind of thing, he's at least playing it somewhat different. and I did appreciate that. But I didn't really buy him so much as the British actor, who we don't really hear speak with a British accent, but he's doing a very over the top Southern accent for Billy the Kid, and it's quite bad. And I assume it's supposed to be bad. I don't know. I've heard him do a Southern accent on Always Sunny, and it kind of sounds like Foghorn Leghorn. But hey, so does Daniel, what's his name in the Knives Out movies, and everyone loves him. So I don't know. But yeah, for this one, I didn't really appreciate it. I think if they would have given us a scene where he actually spoke with a British accent and it was like good, and I'd be like, oh, okay, so the bit is then the British actor is bad at doing accents, but we didn't even really get that. So it was just kind of, I don't know, it just seemed kind of goofy to me and silly. I didn't really love Ken Jeong in this. I think the movie starts out, and you can hear the dialogue, and he's talking to Andrew Santino, I believe is the comedian's name, who I like. I've been watching Dave. He shows up on that. And he's kind of talking. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. He's being kind of the sleazy publicist type guy, and he's a little untrustworthy and stuff. Like, yeah, it's kind of guys you got to deal with in Hollywood. And then I'm like, oh no, he's the main character. Okay, so we're gonna focus on this guy, this unlikable guy. And just the same thing, especially early on. I like Ken Jeong. I have nothing against Ken Jeong, but and I think he's funny and he seems like a nice guy. But some of the humor in this, the way that he is doing it and the way that he was directed to do it, I assume, is just a bit over the top for me and doesn't really work. That being said, some of the scenes where he's like crying and emoting and like being emotional worked really well for me, and I was really impressed. But yeah, some of the way that he kind of sells the jokes and the humor is just a little over the top for me. It didn't really work, and I just didn't really like the character that much either. Also, Glenn Howerton is in this, and I didn't recognize him at first because he's got like a beard, and I don't know. I don't think it's brown face. I don't think he had makeup on, and I realize they're trying to make him look different than he normally does on Always Sunny, but it did almost seem like he was kind of trying to imitate someone of another race. Maybe, again, I'm not sure, but it seemed like kind of a stereotypical portrayal of like an Armenian person or a Persian person. Again, maybe I'm reading too much into that. And again, maybe they could have even had a thing in there where they're like, hey man, so are you like Persian or something? And he's like, no, I'm just a white guy. And you're like, really? Well, what's in that? And, I don't know. I think there could have been a way to do that that maybe could have worked, or maybe not, or maybe go a different way. I don't know. But again, maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm being racist for pointing it out, but it's something that I noticed and I just wanted to mention it. So there we go. Passage of time in this movie, I think, could have been handled a little better. I was able to follow it, but it was a little like you're watching the movie and then something happens and you're like, oh, okay, so clearly time has passed now. That movie, they must be done with that movie, and now he's filming some other movie. You know what I mean? And okay, now clearly more time has passed because he's married and he has kids or whatever. So like, okay, so yeah, but I think they could have done a little bit better job of showing the passage of time, or just because it just took me a second to realize like what's happening. Oh, okay, an indeterminate amount of time has passed. So now that I need like, the 6 months data sign or whatever, but I don't know, something, maybe some spinning newspapers, some kind of classic Hollywood stuff like that would have worked, but I don't know. I think overall the movie is just a bit too over the top too. A lot of the humor is just a little too broad, and the characters, these Hollywood kind of characters that they're making fun of, are so cartoonish and over the top that it makes the satire look toothless. Where I feel like if they would have played it a little more subtle and they would have made the characters a little, and there are some things that do kind of work like that, like when the production assistant or somebody comes into the makeup trailer and they're like, oh my God, you're so nice, I like you so much. And then she leaves like, oh my God, I hate her, she's the worst. Stuff like that, I think maybe could have worked a little better, but some of it, the characters are just so cartoonishly evil and over the top that it's just like, you're not really satirizing Hollywood at this point because you've made the characters so unbelievable that doesn't really feel real to me. So that was kind of my main issue with that. And then overall, the movie's just not that funny. Like I said, there was, I think, 3 times where I did laugh out loud. And I remember being somewhat embarrassed for it because there was only one other person in the theater and they didn't laugh at all. And then I felt like, am I dumb? Am I stupid for this? And obviously, I don't mean to say other people's opinion should matter that much, but the point of a comedy, the number one goal of a comedy is to be funny. And if it's funny, then it works. If the story doesn't work, if the casting is wrong, if whatever else, it's fine. As long as it's funny, if it makes people laugh, that's all you really need. And for me, again, it's very subjective, of course, but for me, yeah, it didn't really make me laugh, and it wasn't that funny. And it felt kind of long, even though it's not a very long movie. So in that movie, like I said, written and directed by Charlie Day from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It had a bunch of the Always Sunny regulars in here. Jimmy Simpson shows up as a talk show host. Lance Barber is there as his sidekick. We've got Artemis in there, and then the waitress, who's Mary Elizabeth Ellis, who's actually Charlie Day's wife in real life. I will say, when I saw this movie, I heard Charlie Day was making a movie, and I was like, cool, I want to see that. I like him. He seems like a nice guy. I saw the trailer, and didn't look very good. I wasn't really into it, and I'm like, maybe I can skip this one. Maybe I'll wait till it comes out on video. But then I watched, there's a Criterion collection. They do like closet picks, and they have people go in. And I was watching a bunch of them, and I came across Charlie Day's, and it was interesting. It seemed like, he had mentioned some movies that I wasn't familiar with, and it seemed like he kind of knew what he was talking about. So I'm like, hey, maybe there's one. I think in the comments section there, or maybe in another video, people were talking about like, he's great on Always Sunny, and his music's really good. And I'm sure, his directing is going to be great as well. And I'm like, yeah, his music is really good. Yeah, I like those songs he plays on this show. And I had a friend who had one of them as his ringtone for a long time. So like, yeah, I think I kind of like bought into it. And I was like, yeah, maybe this is going to be good. And well, so the movie was mostly filmed in 2018. So that sort of explains why Ray Liotta, of course, is still in, because he passed away. But then I think they did do some reshoots recently. I feel like, I assume at least, the COVID pandemic is kind of what threw off the release a little bit. And that's why, it took so long to come out. But yeah, I feel like I've seen people compare this to like Being There or some other kind of Hollywood satires and stuff like that. And there's obviously Monte Pronto is sort of a Charlie Chaplin type character who doesn't really speak and just kind of like, has a good time, dances, and has fun like that. And I feel like there's definitely a classic Hollywood feel to this, like a Billy Wilder type, or even like a later, like a Blake Edwards kind of thing. Is what I feel like he was going for. Maybe I don't really know exactly what his influences were, and I don't know enough about old time, classic Hollywood comedies. But I feel like he was going for that classic Hollywood comedy vibe. And I guess my question with that is, comedy is of course very subjective, but also generally doesn't really age well. I mean, like Airplane is still good. There are some good ones, but a lot of comedies, and I found this recently just watching stuff from the 90s, like they're okay, they're funny, but then like there's some stuff that's just so out of place, just random homophobia or transphobia, or, whatever, someone says the R word or the F word, or, something like that. And it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. So I never really enjoy that kind of stuff. And so I guess my issue is that, knowing that comedy doesn't age well, deciding to do a comedy in the style of an older comedy is an interesting choice. And I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with it. Man of the Century is sort of like a black and white style comedy. It came out in the 90s, but it's doing that sort of 30s style thing. And I love it. It's one of my favorite movies. But I didn't love this one as much. And I'm not the only one. Rotten Tomatoes score on this one for the critics is 15%, and the audience is 31%. So the audience is a little more charitable, but still, most people aren't really liking it. I have seen some people who seem to really like it, and they just thought it was great. But for the most part, I think people we're all kind of agreeing here, which is that, we like Charlie Day, and I wish it were better, but didn't really work for me. So my score on this one, I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 10. I think it was okay. It was an interesting enough premise, and yeah, I just think at the end of the day, it didn't make me laugh, which is what it's supposed to do. So, but if you saw the movie, let me know what you thought of it down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great night. See you here again next week.